The Board of Directors meeting for June 6th, Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District is called to order. And Pledge of Allegiance. Amy, how about you want to lead us?
Place your hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
Director Mishler?
Here.
Director Magner? Director Kelly?
Here.
Director Malloy? Here. Chairman Dixon?
Here. Okay, amendments to the agenda. Do we have any amendments?
I don't see the recorder.
What's that?
I don't see the recorder.
We're on video.
Oh, that's right.
Sorry. So no, if there are no amendments, can we have a?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as proposed.
Second. Director Malloy?
Aye.
Director Mishler?
Aye.
Director Magner? Aye. Director Kelly?
Aye.
Chairman Dixon?
Aye. Okay, and presentations, district highlights. Do I have to, look,
Is the button pushed?
try now.
Chairman Dixon,
There we go.
members of the board, before I begin with our district highlights, we have a great highlight we'd like to share with you, and that is the hiring of our new recreation coordinator. So, Caitlin, can you come on up? This is Caitlin Simber-Klickener, who just was hired as our recreation coordinator, and then she went off and got married and changed her name on us. So we're very excited to have Caitlin on board. She's got a big job and big shoes to fill, but we think she can handle the task. So we'd like for you all to welcome her to the district, and if you see her around, please don't hesitate to ask her. She's been a senior rec leader for us for many years, and she was also acting as our camp counselor. So she's been running Camp Fantastic. So maybe she has a few words to say.
I just want to thank Amy for this opportunity and hope to see everyone at all these wonderful special events we have coming up. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our district highlights. We're going to start with our last special event, which was this past weekend. It was out at Cam Grove Park. It was held on the 3rd. It's our National Trails Day, and we had numerous activities going on. There was a garden bus tour that went around town. It had at least 40 participants. And they all came back with rave reviews of how everything went so splendidly for them. There were giveaways, crafts, you can see in the bottom picture there, we have some Girl Scouts holding some of the succulent plants. The Ojai Raptor Center came and had a live bird show. We had the Daryl Wager ribbon cutting, and his wife Janice was there along with his 3 children, and they were very appreciative, and I've seen comments they've made on Facebook. They were so thrilled to have the district recognize Daryl in this way, so it was very touching for them. There are taxidermy animals were out there for the kids to observe and to actually get a chance to touch. There was guided trail hikes. Smash Burgers helped sponsor our hot dog lunch. There were several park beautification projects going on, along with tree planting, and it was estimated there was about 500 people from the community out there, so fantastic event. Moving along to our aquatic center, June's going to be a busy month for them. On the 12th, they begin their lifeguard certification class. The 19th, they're going to sponsor another, hopefully successful pirate and mermaid camp, along with having their swim lessons begin. And then on the 26th, they'll have their first junior lifeguard camp. Moving to our senior division, we have an update. We had an excursion planned for August, and we found out today it's just about filled. We think there might be 1 or 2 seats left on the bus. That was to Lake Arrowhead. So we're encouraging people to move ahead and sign up for our September excursion because obviously excursions are getting more and more popular. So in September, we will be going to Oak Glen Apple Farm. So they'll get a chance to see apples being picked and processed and cider being made and applesauce, etc. They'll have a delicious lunch and have the opportunity to spend some time at the village shopping. Our center has bingo going on. We've moved bingo to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, beginning at noon each day. We're getting a lot more people coming into bingo, so we encourage you to come early, get your papers and your games set up, and remember throughout the summer months, it's a nice air-conditioned room, so come and join us. Also in June, we have our Independence Dance scheduled. It'll be in the auditorium. We'll have you come wearing your red, white, and blue and enjoy the music from the Seniors of Note Band, which is a very live 18-piece big band, so it's a chance to experience some really great live music. In our outdoor education program, we have 2 camps coming up this summer, and registration is now being taken, so please take this opportunity to sign up now. The one in July will be a junior ranger camp, and the one in August will be an outdoor survival skills camp. So we encourage you to sign up early because we have a feeling these camps also are going to get booked out. In our sports division at the BMX track, they will be hosting their state race the weekend of June 17th and 18th from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. out there, and they're expecting at least 325 riders. Again, in our sports division at the RC track, they're going to be hosting their 11th annual Big Fat Turkey Race. It'll be the weekend of the 23rd and 25th, and they think they'll get an entry of at least 125 drivers. Moving over to our roller hockey ring, Freedom Park Arena. They started their season this week on the 5th. It's going to be a 12-week season, and they are still open for registrations. There's a number on the screen, so if you want any league information or if you're interested in finding out about joining them out there, please don't hesitate to call. They'll still take your registration.
Jane, do you know the ages for the roller hockey?
For roller hockey,
Is it adult and children, or just?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Over at Mission Oaks, on the tennis courts, the junior tennis tournament will be held the weekend again of the 23rd to 25th. And they think they'll have approximately 60 youth out there, and those ages are 10 to 18. Moving on to our recreation for the summer, we have Camp Funtastic all set up and scheduled. Registration is now open. The camp will start on the 19th and run through August 25th. It's a Monday through Friday camp. The regular camp hours are 9 to 4, but for parents who are working, they offer extended hours from 7:30 to 6 p.m., and they have all kinds of events planned: pool days, excursion days, gym days, movie days, field days, gym days. So please sign up now so that your kids don't miss out on any of the fun. Also, upcoming summer events, we're going to start on Wednesday, June 21st with our National Go Skate Day. That'll be out at our skate park. There'll be all kinds of fun music being played, contests going on, giveaways, and lots of different contests the kids can join. And also, we're going to be starting our movies in the park on Friday evenings. The first one will be June 23rd. The movie will be Finding Dory. And on the 30th, it'll be Pete's Dragon. And these movies will begin at dusk at a community center. So as far as district highlights, do you have any questions?
No. Oh, thank you, Jane.
You're very welcome. I'm going to go on with our district spotlight then. Okay, the Parks Division has decided to feature several of our parks. That way our community begins to learn about all our different parks. So we're going to start with our Neal Ranch Park. Our Neal Ranch is a community park. It was developed in 1980, and this park is a total of 5 acres. It has a playground that can accommodate ages 2 to 12. It has a reservable picnic site for up to 20 people. So there's picnic tables and several barbecue grills and benches, and there is a restroom on site. And there's also a DG running track in the park, along with recently installed adult exercise equipment. The next park we'd like to feature is one of our smaller parks. It's Camarillo Park, and it is located over on the side of town by In-N-Out Burger, right up the street. It is a small neighborhood park, which is about 1 acre. It has one playground, which it can accommodate children roughly from the ages 2 to 5. So it has a couple picnic tables and a half basketball court at that park. And the third park they wanted to highlight is Nancy Bush Park. That's at the corner of Crestview and Las Posas Road. It's a community park that was developed in 1968. This park has some of the beautiful pepper trees that are originally been in town for a long time. This park is a total of 3.4 acres. It has 2 playground structures, so it can accommodate younger children, ages 2 to 5, and then older children from 5 to 12. It has a reservable picnic site with 8 picnic tables, so it can accommodate up to 60 people in this park. So it has the barbecue grills and benches. It also has a restroom on site and a DG walking path. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you again. Okay, 50 Plus Expo.
Good evening, Chairman Dixon, members of the board. I am here to give you the update on our 50 Plus Expo. This year we had our 11th annual Expo. We had so many exhibitors this year that we rented an entrance canopy for the general public to walk through. And we still had so many exhibitors that our auditorium lobby was full. And once we get into the auditorium, you can see why we had to rent those. We were jam-packed. This was for all of our exhibitors. This was so that seniors and their families were able to go around and get any answers to their questions and any information that they needed, and of course, pick up all of their free giveaways. Once you got out to the courtyard, we had live entertainment. Again, this year we had our ukulele strummers, and they were very excited to get out this year because they had just bought brand new costumes, and this was their first time wearing them. After we had the ukulele strummers, we had Classical Guitar Society provide a couple of performers, and last but definitely not least, Camarillo Cafe provided some performers for us. Over in room 7, we had our art show, or our art gallery. This is provided every year by our Tuesday morning art group. They use whatever medium makes them most comfortable. We have watercolor, oil, and chalk. They have amazing artwork. We actually had a couple that were sold again this year. They come in the day before, they do the setup, and afterwards they do the cleanup, which is very appreciative. At this time, I would like to thank our silver sponsor, which is Almavia of Camarillo. Once again, they provided our lunch. It was a little bit different this year. They had a roast beef lunch, and they have a new chef who provided an enormous amount of desserts that were so delicious that some people went back for seconds and thirds. I would also like to thank our bronze sponsors. Without their sponsorship and their donations, it probably would not have been as wonderful as it was. So we have Brookdale of Camarillo, Camarillo Council on Aging, the Community Memorial Health System, and Shea Mortgage. This year we had quite a few screenings. The Center for Vein Wellness did ultrasounds that were provided on legs. Acoustic hearing aids went in and they did tune-ups on hearing aids and actually did a few cleanup jobs on some of those aids. We had Miracle Ear provide hearing tests, and Health Aware provided blood pressure readings that were taken before and after a massage to see if there was any sort of differences in their blood pressure. We also were providing posture and scoliosis screenings, and that was by Bates Chiropractic. And Scanned Independence at Home provided stroke screenings. And out in front of the senior center, we had our mobile unit, and they provided body mass index, waist circumference, blood pressure, globin, sorry, I'm tripping over that one, and blood glucose. At this time, I would like to give a special thanks to all of our staff and volunteers. We could not have done any of this without their help. We started the morning off with a group that came from taxaudit.com. They had men, women, and children show up bright and early, 7 o'clock in the morning, to help us set up tables, chairs, canopies, and our stage. After they were done, we had a group come in, and they did the continental breakfast for the exhibitors and also did the check-in for the exhibitors. And when they were done checking them in, they went to the front canopy and handed out brochures. We had another group come in and took over the serving of the lunch, which meant that they came in, they set up for the lunch, they served the lunch, and they cleaned up for the lunch. And we could not have done any of that with all of them. A whole different array of volunteers. I am just tickled pink that they all showed up. I also want to give a shout out to Brandon and his crew. They worked really hard the day before to get everything set up. They were great at helping us make accommodations for some people that showed up unannounced. But we got them in, and everybody was happy, and they were just so sweet. And then, of course, with the cleanup at the end of the day. And, oh, yes, and we gave them lunch, as you can see by Joey up there. He was just thrilled. And definitely not but least, sorry, the Recreation Department. We could not have done any of this without them. We had, they covered everything from the banners, the brochures, the flyers, the setup, the cleanup, the decorating. They moved things for us. Without the Recreation Department, this would not have been possible. So the Senior Center really greatly appreciates all of them. So when everything is all said and done, after we paid the bills, which included printing, the canopy rentals, the materials, and the food, we had a net profit of $10,782. I would like to point out that this was done and collected this year without our volunteer committee. This was all done by staff. So, thank you very much. Do we have any questions?
No question. I just want to comment that I want to thank you for all the work. I was there, and I was amazed how many people, they wanted to go in there for that lunch, not even for the food, just for the desserts.
Oh, yeah.
People just wanted to buy the meal ticket for the desserts. So
Desserts were awesome this year. Yes, they were. All right. Thank you very much. Yes.
Denise, it was awesome. I watched from afar. I was in a meeting in the boss's office and got to watch what was going on, and I got to listen to some of the music, and I seen the new attire, which was really nice.
It was.
So, and thanks again to all the staff, everybody. I mean, you guys pulled together to do these great things like this in the Christmas parade and everything. So thanks again to the staff.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Denise. Okay, senior volunteer recognition.
Mitchell, can we turn that back on? All right. You get me again. So at this time, I would like to take the opportunity to recognize one of our fantastic volunteers. I got to get this thing to move. The volunteer we'd like to recognize this year is Renee Sherry. Renee was born in Minnesota, made it to the Southwest, where she began taking art lessons at the age of 8. She continued with art lessons until she got her degree at San Diego University, and she got that degree in fine arts. She began coming to the Senior Center because her father was interested in art classes. So in order to spend time with her father, Renee came and was taking art lessons from a gentleman who was there teaching. His name is Bob Dominguez, and he was working with our Braille Low Vision group. Well, Bob realized after a little bit of time that he preferred painting than teaching. So as he decided to just do the painting end of the day, Renee graciously stepped up and became the teacher mentor, and she has been doing it now for about 14 years. About 14 years. She also, as Denise pointed out at our expo, she's the one that helps with setting up that art gallery, organizing it, putting the pictures in. I would just put pictures on the wall, but she says they have to be in a certain order and a certain number, and she's just got the talent and the wisdom to do that. Renee has traveled to every state in the United States, she's told me. She's also been to, I think it's China, Europe, Canada, and Mexico. And so I think her travels have really instilled a love of culture and art in her. And she, if you asked her students, will tell you, is amazing. She is so gracious about mentoring everybody. And she would tell each one of you, you are all artistically talented. There's no one who doesn't have some talent in them. Come visit her. She'll give you a pencil and a paper, and she'll get you started. And there's been many, many great artists that have come out of this art class that started by saying, I have no talent. So, Renee, will you please come on up and let our board and those here recognize you for everything you do for us.
What are you looking for?
Thank you for the flowers and the opportunity to speak. And I get more out than I give. I enjoy it, meeting people and sharing what I know. And we have a grand time. It's more social than art, I think. My whole philosophy, well, I one time read that more centers of the brain light up when you do art, when you paint, than any other single thing you can do. So it's, besides being creative, it's good for the brain.
Well, then I'll ask you to walk up here.
Well, thank you very much.
The chairman has a plaque for you. So
Come on over here. Come on over here. We want to get a picture with you.
That's right.
Okay.
Who's hiding? I'm hiding? I never hide.
Don't worry.
Congratulations.
Okay, the Pleasant Valley Swim Team.
Good evening, Chairman Dixon, members of the board. I would like to present Tim Hedrick. He is the head coach for Pleasant Valley Swim Team, and he is here to present his annual update.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's a pleasure to speak with you again and review the progress of the Pleasant Valley Swim Team. As Macy said, I'm the head coach and general manager of the team, and have over the last year taken on the role of CEO as well. It's been my pleasure to lead this club through lean times and now into some better times, and we'll kind of go through that. So the topics, some quick trends, synopsis of the 2015 to 2016 year outlook for this current year, which we're now through quarter 3, and I apologize for that. Some notes about our partnership and a little bit about some of our swimmers making waves. Please feel free to stop me at any point as I go through this. Our membership trends from 2007 when I joined the team, as you can see, and this was right after the renovation of the Indoor Aquatic Center, and we had some steady growth there through 2014, a little bit of leveling in 2015 and 2016. So we've had a slight downward trend, but again, nothing too alarming. It's just typical correction for swim teams. The national trend is for a post-Olympic bump after the Olympics this past year. And what we've seen so far from the blue line that you see up there is a slight decrease in September membership. So we didn't see that initial bump, although the Olympics were obviously quite popular for swimming. So we continue to ride it, but we didn't see that bump that we've seen in prior years. Let's see, anything else noteworthy there? 2014 is when the Camarillo High School pool came online. And that's when we expanded our program to both pools, and we benefited from having the increased membership as a result. This is a new chart for you. From prior years, we've done more of a group analysis. I wanted to kind of show you kind of our income trends. So the two lines at the top, the yellow is our total income each year, and the red line is our total expenses. And as you can see, they tend to track pretty close, except for 2014 when we had that expansion of the two pools. And that was a provisionary member trend on our part. We hired more staff. We had more swimmers. And what we found out very quickly was more swimmers and more income also means more staff and more expense. So through some attrition and moving groups around, we kind of hit a sweeter spot. Our overall goal is to keep our membership dues as low as possible. So what I'm trying to do on the income and the expense line is keep those reasonably close. I certainly don't want an out-of-band income compared to our expenses. I want our members to feel as if they're getting a good value for what we're doing. The bottom two lines, the white line and the blue line, is our income and our expense for our swim meets that we host. And that's our one area of drastic improvement year over year, is that our swim meets are becoming very, very popular, and the income is going up accordingly. To right now, we have a very nice income over expense for our swim meets. In our current fiscal year, and again, quarter 3, we still have 2 more meets to go. We are already at $60,000 in income versus $17,000 expense. So we have matched last year's income and expense for swim meets, and we still have 2 more meets to go in the year. So that's a very positive thing for the swim club. All right. Administratively, we have 195 members. And it was a drop of 7%. Again, we were looking at some attrition before the Olympics and hoping for a little bit of bump afterward. The bump didn't happen. One area of potential growth was the outreach at Camarillo High School. The numbers there are still a little soft, and some of that has to do with high school students. Camarillo High School in particular has a very high academic load. A lot of kids that are participating there do it seasonally rather than year-round. Our 2 pool resource requirements are stabilizing. That is, we've figured out kind of a sweet spot between our coaching staff demographics at the 2 pools, as well as the programming we're putting in place at both pools. We have established consistent time blocks both at the indoor pool from Parks and Rec, and also at the Camarillo High School pool. We had to fight for the Camarillo High School pool time slot with other outside interests through the high school district, but I'm pleased to report that we now have consistent time across the year, and that consistency for us is key. The last one there with the 2 pool, because we're trying to be careful on our coaching outlays, we have a few members as well as coaches that travel between pools. So they'll start at the indoor pool as coaches. They'll start at the indoor pool and end up at the outdoor pool to finish the night. We have some families that have members that are split between the development groups that are indoors and the competitive groups that are outdoors, and they end up making the travel between the two pools as well. We have some challenges with the high school, and that is water time, but again, that's stabilizing, but there is always a need by outside groups, and mainly that's water polo groups. And I mentioned the reluctance of high school members. Our meat income, as I said in the previous slide, trending upward. We're filling a need. They're becoming popular, and the setting of the Camarillo High School pool is nothing short of amazing. Being tucked up upon the hill there with great views and great air. The big issue that we've dealt with over the last year, as Erica Johnson, our president, last year had mentioned to you in that report, the high school pool rental policy changes were being discussed, and that was a big unknown for us. The review was completed this year, and the new fee structure is to be implemented in FY18 starting July 1. Their overriding goal for their rental policies was consistency across all of the district demographics, meaning no matter what area of their sphere of influence, they want a football field or a soccer field or a swimming pool rent price to cost the same regardless of where they are in their sphere, whether it's Oxnard, Camarillo, Hueneme, and such. The functional change for us is there's a modest rent increase for the high school pools, but it is in line with current PVRPD rates for the indoor pool. So again, we'll be paying about the same. In prior years here, we've been paying slightly less for the high school resources. Our competitive synopsis for last year, we set 30 team records, and it was spread across all of our age groups. Anybody following our swim team, there are some familiar names up there, and I'll introduce a couple of them. I didn't have a chance to get them here tonight, but you'll become familiar with some of these people. So we've got people across the board. They're up and coming. We've had some great championship meet success with junior Olympic champions in Carolina Ezekiel and Jason Liu, among others. They are consistently, year over year, competing very well. Our high school teams last year, of which I helped coach, and we've had an involvement in the last 3 years. The girls won the league title and were third in CIFs. Last year, the boys won the league title, the second in the row, and we were sixth in CIF. And I'm pleased to report this year the boys and girls both won league titles again this year. Our outlook for this current year, again, we're in quarter 3. We were on budget last year with a modest net profit. And the reason for that net profit being modest was we delayed our swim-a-thon, which usually brings us about $12,000 to $13,000. We delayed it to quarter 1 of FY17, which puts us in the September-October timeframe. It's a better calendar fit than us trying to shoehorn it into April or May, which for us is a very busy time of the year. For 2016, again, last September, we did a slight dues increase in anticipation of the rent increases through Oxnard Union High School District. That's allowed us to bank just a little bit of money and get a little bit more comfortable with our finances. Our current net profit, again, through the quarter 3 is $35,000. We still want to expand our services, and most of that expansion will be at the Camarillo High School Aquatic Center. And again, I'm targeting the high school kids. That's going to be our biggest area for growth. Post-Olympic membership bump of 5%. We've seen that kind of across the board. We can't attribute it entirely to the Olympics, but certainly people have been talking about it. And the last bullet item there was swim jitsu, and that was an outdoor water challenge that we hosted just last weekend for the first time in partnership with USA Swimming. It's a water obstacle course. We attracted 260 swimmers from all over the Southland. And we hope to get the word out a little bit better next year to better attract Camarillo community people. It's really meant to be a community outreach, not just attracting swimmers, but anybody with an interest in giving that a try. The good news is we were able to break even financially with it as a first-year try, and we expect a much higher profit next year on that, potentially in the 6 to 10K range for a single event on a single day. This should look kind of familiar. We've done this a few years in a row here. We've had a 45-year plus partnership with Parks and Rec Department. I encourage all of my swimmers to give back via involvement. Many of them are on staff for Macy at the indoor pool. Again, I encourage that completely. I want my swimmers teaching the next generation of swimmers. The services provided by the Parks and Rec are key to our developmental level, and that starts everything. I want to take this opportunity to recognize Macy, Amy, Bob, everybody involved with keeping that pool up and running and consistent. That's the key for us, is the consistency of the resource. We have absolutely seen more and more swimmers come through Parks and Rec now as they go through the levels. I think level 5 and level 6 is where the inquiries start coming to the swim club. We have fewer of what do I call backyard swimmers now making inquiries directly into the swim club. So that's a good thing, and I can't understate that enough, that what you are doing to get the word out about your pool and your lessons program, it's working. And we're seeing that directly. I'm hoping you're seeing that too, as far as numbers and quality. Yeah. People making waves. One of them, Jason Liu, he's a junior at Newbury Park High School. He was on the first team All-County last year. He's cracking into the junior level nationally. You're going to hear some more about him over the summertime and probably into next year as well. He had an outstanding season for Newbury Park. The other two, Carolina DeZekiel and Anna Hidalgo, these are two of my fastest girls ever. They're two of the fastest 13, 14 girls in Southern California. They will both be freshmen at Camarillo High School next year. They have this funny thing where they're trading off team records. One will break it 1 week, and we'll come back 1 or 2 or 3 weeks later, and the other one will break it. And it's a nice little healthy competition. They're great friends, and they're good workout companions. That's all I have. That's a picture of me and my wife, Vicki, who's also our senior age group coach. Any questions?
Thank you. Questions, comments? Mike?
I just want to say thank you again for everything you're doing. It's good to see you doing all that stuff, bouncing back and forth. I know it's hard between two pools, but thank you for putting all that work in.
Thank you. My pleasure. It's all about the kids and giving back. You know, just like the other gal said, it's all about giving back. Thank you.
Well, yeah.
You mentioned a little earlier that one of your goals is to keep your fees down for your swimmers.
Yes.
If you were to raise on your competitive level, what effect would that have, in your belief?
The competitive level is a fickle thing. What we find is the development level stays community-based. The competitive level has many options up and down the freeway here. I think 7 swim clubs within 15 miles in either direction. If we're priced too high, people will simply find a better value out there somewhere else. And they tend to look at the monthly dues as that value decider, not necessarily the quality of the program, the quality of the swimmers, the quality of the coaches. They're always looking at how much they have to put out every month in fees.
I see.
So we're trying to be careful there to be not the highest in the area.
So you're like somewhere in the middle?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had just a couple questions. So I think you kind of answered this, but there's a place that you have these really highly competitive swimmers, but there's a place on the team for pretty much every level of swimming. Is that
Yes.
Is that true?
What we have sought to do over the years is be a community resource for Camarillo, as well as provide that competitive level for anyone in the area that's interested in what we do and how we do it.
Okay.
You bet.
And the with your availability of swim time, does that impact the number of swimmers that you can manage? Are you approaching that level, or you still have plenty of room for additional swimmers? Or
the funny thing is, our sweet spot of somewhere around 200 swimmers, where we've been the last 2 years, is a good, comfortable level. When we peaked in 2014 at 230 swimmers, we were jammed, and I didn't see the benefit to doing that. You know, again, the expenses went up along with the income because I needed more staff to be able to guarantee the safety of the kids in the water. I would rather have a swim team of this size rather than one that's 10 or 20% higher, just because it's a good manageable level. I get a chance to know everybody, and we're not all running ragged trying to coordinate everything.
I got one more question.
Okay, one more. Go ahead.
Would you say that your developmental element of your club goes up when the competitive side of the club goes up?
I think so. The competitive side does get kind of the word out and get the recognition in the community, and that tends to attract more people into the sport of swimming, and hopefully through the lessons program to get the proper training.
Thanks.
The only comment I had is, you know, I'm always focused on the numbers, and being near the end of the year, you showed some pretty aggressive increases, and you just said that you made them almost to the dollar, it looks like.
Yeah.
And so you're really doing solid, and that's great too, because our biggest fear is that we would have to be in your job at some point because, you know, you weren't doing well.
Correct. I remember you saying that
Yeah,
a few years ago.
That's my continuing nightmare. It's never happened, and because of people like you. And thanks a bunch. Keep
pleasure.
doing
You're
it.
welcome.
That's CIF high school stuff. That's, you know, that's beginning to end. That's really where it finishes. That's fantastic, because you're sending kids to college when you do stuff
That's
like
correct.
that. Yeah.
Don't burn out is the key. Is that right?
That's
Yeah.
it, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, great presentation. Thank you. All right. Next is public comment. I have no public comment cards, so I'm not going to read this whole thing unless there's someone out there, anyone here to make any comments to the board. Seeing none, then we'll move on. Consent agenda. All right. We have any?
Not for me.
I'll make a motion to accept or to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Director Magner,
Aye.
Director Malloy,
Aye.
Director Mishler,
Aye.
Director Kelly,
Aye.
Chairman Dixon.
Aye. Okay. All right, next we are moving on to a public hearing. This is regarding the consideration and adoption of Resolution 575, directing levy assessments, confirming the diagram, assessment, and ordering levy of assessment for fiscal year 2017-18 for the maintenance and for Park Maintenance and Recreation Improvement District of Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District. That's a lot to say. So I'm going to go to the public hearing. Okay. I now declare this meeting to be open for a public hearing to consider ordering of improvements and the levy of the proposed assessments. Prior to the conclusion of the hearing, any interested person may file a written protest with the clerk of the board. A written protest shall state all of objection. A protest by a property owner shall contain a description sufficient to identify the property owner as such owner. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak for ordering of the improvements and the levy of proposed assessments? If so, you have 3 minutes. Okay, seeing none. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak against the ordering of the improvements and the levy of proposed assessments? Okay. Seeing none. Do we close this meeting now and then vote on it afterwards? Yeah. So I declare this public hearing closed. Okay. Okay. So, Leo, do you have a presentation?
Chairman Dixon, members of the board, I'd like to introduce Jeanette Henson. She's with SCI Consulting Firm. She and her team have prepared the engineer's report, and she's here to present that this evening.
Good evening, board members, Chairman Dixon. As Leo mentioned, I'm Jeanette Henson. I'm with SCI Consulting Group. SCI Consulting Group is a public finance consulting firm with a mission of assisting public agencies with revenue enhancement and administration. And as Leo mentioned, we work with the district on administration of the assessments and assessment engineering. The assessment district was formed in February and March of 2001 by property owner mail ballot proceeding. Due to limited revenues and a growing community with expanding park acreage, the district projected it wouldn't be able to maintain its current and future parks without additional revenues. This slide shows a history of assessments levied and collected for the past 5 years. Please note that the current fiscal year assessment collections only reflect assessments collected through April 10th. Now, on average, an average of 3 to 5% of the assessments are collected between April and June every year. So I would anticipate, based on the prior year collections, that that delinquency rate will be closer to 1% by the close of the fiscal year. The assessment district was formed pursuant to the Landscaping and Lighting Act of 1972. The board has the authority to continue the assessments every year, but first, the Landscaping and Lighting Act has certain requirements that must be met. An engineer's report must be prepared by a licensed civil engineer and must include the proposed improvements and services to be funded with the assessments, an estimate of cost to provide the services and improvements, and an allocation of benefit to different property types. The ballot proceeding did include approval of an annual adjustment tied to the consumer price index for the Los Angeles area not to exceed 3% per year. The consumer price index increase in the Los Angeles area in 2016 was 1.96%. So this gives you the ability to increase the assessment rate by 75 cents for a total of $38.95 per single-family home per year, which would bring in an additional $20,000 of assessment revenues. The Landscaping and Lighting Act has a 3-step process that's required to continue the assessments. The first step was completed in February when the board approved a resolution directing preparation of the engineer's report. The second step was completed in May when the board approved a resolution of intention to levy continued assessments, preliminarily approve the engineer's report, and set today at 6 o'clock as the date and time for the public hearing. So tonight, since we already held the public hearing, I'd ask that you consider the resolution before you to approve the final engineer's report and order the levy of assessments. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Any questions? No? No questions. Thank you very much. Okay. So we have a motion to approve.
Let me make the motion to adopt Resolution 576, directing assessment levies.
575.
Excuse me, 575. Thanks, Mike. I can't read so good here. Directing assessment levies, confirming the diagram, approving the engineer's report for fiscal year 2017-18 for the Park Maintenance and Recreation Improvement District.
I'll second.
Director Malloy.
Aye.
Director Magner.
Aye.
Director Mishler.
Aye.
Director Kelly. Aye. Chairman Dixon.
Aye. Okay. All right. Moving on to item 9. Consideration and approval of preliminary fiscal year 2017-2018 budgets for the general fund and assessment district.
Chairman Dixon, members of the board, tonight I'm going to ask that the board consider adopting the preliminary fiscal year 2017-2018 general fund and assessment district budgets. Over the last month and a half, the district has held 3 budget workshops to discuss the plans and future of the district's financial status. A little bit on the district overview. The primary source of our revenue is property tax and public fees. We serve over 70,000 constituents, and we provide a full range of facilities and programs for the citizens of Camarillo. We have 3 departments: Parks, Recreation, and Administration, and we have 2 funds, the General Fund and the Assessment District Fund. The district accomplishments for this past year is we refunded the Certificate of Participation with a 5.31% net present value savings. We have obtained over $100,000 in grant funding. We installed 3 new playgrounds. We established a wildlife program, and we expanded our trails. We took ownership over the Mel Vincent Park, and we've hosted 2 successful foundation events. Our capital improvement accomplishments, just to name a few, are the Cam Grove parking lot, the Charter Oaks Windrow, the trees, the email migration, the updated phone system, and the trail expansion. Here's a snapshot of our 5-year comparison of the district. The first 3 years are actual numbers. The first 3 sets of columns are actual numbers. The last 2 are the budgeted for 2016-17 and our upcoming year of 2017-2018. As you can see, the district is still improving in our financial status, where our revenue is exceeding our expenses. Here's that same snapshot, just in a different format. As you can see, in 2014-15, we had a spike in revenue. That was due to $2.8 million in Quimby. And then this year, we've received over $3 million in Quimby as well. This upcoming fiscal year, the revenue will be at $7.5 million, and expenses will too be at $7.5 million, but we'll have a surplus of a little over $16,700. Here is the 17-18 budget in a snapshot. You can see where the revenue does exceed the expenses, and you can see we plan on spending over $800,000 in capital improvements this upcoming year. Here is a look at the staffing of the district. As you can see, the admin department will increase by 1 employee. Recreation will increase by 1, as well as Parks and the Assessment District by 1. Those include full-time and part-time year-round employees. Here's a position allocation for the admin department. We have 8 full-time employees with 1 part-time year-round. Here's a position allocation for recreation, which consists of 7 full-time employees and 1 part-time year-round employee. And the parks allocation, 22 full-time employees and 2 part-time year-round employees. Here are some brief changes to our budget from fiscal year 16-17 to 17-18. The overall difference is $270,000. The primary change, as you can see, is that top line, the CalPERS unfunded liability. As you can see, it went up about $44,000 from one fiscal year to the next. We're moving on to our capital improvement projects. The capital improvement project 5-year capital plan was developed in 09-10. The district has completed over $15 million in projects. We have a plan overview section 1 that identifies the projects and plans from 14 to 19, as well as longer term projects. The capital improvement plan can change as priorities and needs change as the district needs. Here's a snapshot of our 5-year comparison. Again, the first 3 columns are actual spent. The last 2 are the budgeted. And again, you can see we're going to be spending over $800,000 in this upcoming fiscal year in improvements. The upcoming projects for 17-18 are rather lengthy. We're going to be doing the Kildee parking lot, and the Kildee Pavilion, and the Kildee Pour and Play. We're going to be repairing the roofs on the admin building. We're going to be repairing the ducting in the auditorium and the restrooms in the auditorium, as well as the patio. We're going to start design work for Freedom Park for ball fields. We're going to be doing a wall at the Springville Dog Park. There'll be improvements at the Cam Grove Dog Park. We'll be putting in, hopefully, tankless water heaters at the pool and adding electrical outlets. We'll be repairing the roof at Mission Oaks. The Pleasant Valley parking lot, a third of it will be repaired and maintained. We're going to be repairing the driveway at the shop. We're going to do an office design for the admin building. As our staffing is growing, we need more office space. And then the $10,000 for the Charter Oak tree, that'll be for maintenance on those trees. And then the needs assessment, which was a project from 16-17, and we're rolling that one over to 17-18, so we can work on completing that project. Again, that's over $800,000 in improvements to the community's parks and facilities. Here's a couple of snapshots of what the citizens will get to see, as far as they will no longer have to see parking lots in this condition. The Bob Kildee parking lot will be replacing 85,000 square feet of asphalt. The lifting of the trees, as far as what the root system is doing, will no longer be. And so it'll be safer for people as well as the older citizens to maneuver in the parking lot. We'll be repairing the pavilion out there and the pour and play. As you can see, the pavilion at Bob Kildee is in bad need of some attention, so that will be repaired and replaced. Here is the pour and play at the Bob Kildee playground. That will be repaired. Here is a wall that is we're going to be putting up at the Springville Dog Park to help with the erosion issues that we have on the hillside. And the aquatic center, again, as I said earlier, we will hopefully go with the tankless water heaters and add additional electrical outlets to meet the demands of the swimmers. Now to take a look at the assessment district. As Jeanette had mentioned, it was formed in 2001, and it was formed due to limited revenues, a growing community, and expanding park acreage, as well as anticipating future funding shortfall. We created it to improve the park maintenance, to fund the future maintenance needs of the district's parks and facilities, and to fund any capital improvement projects. Again, this is the map, and we have 3 zones in the assessment district, and those zones are based on the benefit that the resident receives from the, as far as how close they live to a park or a facility. Here's a 5-year assessment district snapshot. So we've been maintaining pretty well in the assessment district. And again, for the 17-18 preliminary assessment district budget, revenue will exceed expenses by over $17,000. Here's a snapshot of what it would look like as far as revenue versus expenses. And here's a comparison in just a different format of what the last 5 years look like. The first 3 being actual, the last 2 being budgeted. Some major changes to the assessment district budget is that we refunded the 2008 COP, and we've split the payment between the general fund and the assessment district. We were able to add $40,000 for tree maintenance and $40,000 for park amenities. Here are some of the things that the assessment district funds pay for. Here's the tree maintenance or repairs, or if you have a wind event. We'll help pay for new benches and drinking fountains, as well as play equipment. So this evening, I ask that the board approve the general fund and assessment district preliminary budget for fiscal year 2017-2018. Are there any questions?
Yeah, back on slide 18, I think it is, where you talk about the patio at the auditorium. I thought we were going to hold off on that.
I believe this is just till we can, there's concrete areas that have risen up, so they're going to be able to like pull those out and then pour new concrete in so that it's smooth.
Okay, so we're not going to completely replace everything out there.
Correct.
Okay.
As part of the budget hearings, I think we originally came with about 35,000, and the board decided to go back with 12,000 to make it a safe, to be able to make it safe.
Okay,
But
I'm sorry. I
just
missed.
following up on that same item, I thought you were going to come back with a presentation to us on that. You're not going to spend those funds without coming back to the board first, correct?
That is correct, but tonight is just to approve.
It doesn't mean we're going to spend that. It just means the staff is going to look at it and come back to the board.
Correct.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else?
Yeah, I'd like to add a couple of things. Not mentioned in the presentation, but to me a really important part of the budget, which wasn't mentioned, is that we included in those expenses is just like not all just bills to pay. We set aside money for equipment purchases. We set aside money for rainy day fund. We have a much more conservative way of handling our planning, so that we're not like a few $1,000s from break even, which is what it looks like there. There's actually a fair amount of money set aside, just in case. And for protection, which is great, because we never used to do that. And when you get so much of your revenue from the property tax checks like we do, you're so dependent on that one source. If it goes a little sideways, as it did on us, half a decade ago, it really puts us in trouble. And we're much better positioned to do that now. And that's an important part of the process that, unless you came to 3 meetings to go over the budget, you wouldn't know about. The other thing is, I can recall asking Dan, when are we going to have a real capital budget? When are we going to like be spending 10% of our money each year on improvements and upgrades? And I remember Dan just rolling his eyes, like, that's never going to happen. And it's happening. I mean, that's tremendous. It's a lot of stuff here, and significant stuff, and stuff that really makes everything a lot more useful to people. This little auditorium patio that we just talked about, we've had that area closed for years because it wasn't safe. It's just, lots of little things. Picnic tables that are all crumbly, and the plastic is coming off of them and they're rusty. We're going to be able to replace those with that $40,000 we allocate. It's like a lot of little things, but it's stuff that people that live next to a park really appreciate, and things that we haven't been able to get to. And that's what makes me really proud of this. What makes me nervous about this, and you mentioned it, but I'm sure not many people noticed, is that CalPERS unfunded liability payment went up 20%. The reason it went up 20% is because CalPERS adjusted down their forecasted rate of return from 7.5% to 7.375, which doesn't seem like a lot of difference in return rate, but in fact, here's how it pencils out to us. They admitted to us in a conference call that they're only expecting a return rate of 6.2% on their portfolio in the next 10 years, and I expect next February they're going to drop that rate again, and probably the following year. So this is going to be an ongoing challenge, and something we got to really be careful about, because you can't say no to these people. They send us the bill and we have to pay it. That $240,000 is due on July 1st, and it is something that I know we're all aware of and we're cognizant of, but is a factor that we have absolutely zero control over, as does any other agency, and something I got to really keep an eye on. But the good news is we're getting so much more done, and I'm really proud of this budget. So that's all I got to say.
All right. Bob, anything?
Well, we only took a little bit of time, as was mentioned earlier in the presentation, a little bit of time tonight. I can tell you this board worked hours and hours and hours on this through meeting after meeting after meeting, and it's not easy, and there's not always agreement on everything, and everybody did just a great job, and I think we're doing great.
All right. Thank you, Leo. Is there a motion to approve the preliminary budgets for fiscal year 2017 and 18?
So moved.
Second.
Director Malloy.
Aye.
Director Magner.
Aye.
Director Mishler.
Aye.
Director Kelly.
Aye.
Chairman Dixon.
Aye. Okay. 9B, cooperative agreement between the Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District and the City of Camarillo regarding the Senior and Community Recreation Facility Needs Study.
Good evening, Chairman Dixon, members of the board. Thank you for having me tonight. Tonight I'm going to be going over the cooperative agreement and ask that the board approve it. Before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit about how we got to where we're at today. And we'll go over, again, my recommendation, district facility overview, a 2016 program statistic overview, 2016 facility statistic overview. We'll talk about some current issues, and then again, our potential first step to a joint solution with the city of Camarillo. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. It's a really data-driven presentation, so if something seems off or you have questions, again, please do not hesitate to ask.
And Mr. You should add that this is the presentation that was put together by our staff for the representatives from the city when we first started these discussions.
Yes,
let's provide some background.
Thank you for that, Mike. I missed that. And again, like Mike, Director Mishler stated, this presentation was presented to the joint meeting between the city's liaison committee as well as our board's liaison committee, who reviewed it and developed the cooperative agreement that will be in front of you tonight. One more time, it is recommended that the board review and approve the cooperative agreement between the Pleasant Valley Recreation Park District and the City of Camarillo regarding the Senior and Community Recreation Facility Needs Study. Quick overview of the district offerings. As you can see, we have a large amount of offerings, including a public road. In 2016, the recreation staff offered over 1,700 unique programs and classes with over 800,000 program participants. This isn't unique program participants, but this is participant in each activity or event. This does not include any passive park users or participants in sporting events, people who are viewing the sporting events or anything like that. So as you see, they've done a lot with the resources we currently have. This is spread across 4 different areas, including aquatics, who has the largest distribution of 640 different programs. Our community-wide classes, which include contract courses, at 337. We have senior-specific programming at 227 different programs, and our sports programming with 553 different offerings. And again, this is not to say that seniors aren't participating in the aquatics and the sporting events. What I am saying is that the 227 programs in this presentation are specifically for seniors. And when we look at capacity for these specific programs, you can see our aquatics is doing a really good job. They're at 77% capacity. Our community-wide classes are 45% capacity. Our senior programming is clearly doing an exceptional job with the facilities they have, but unfortunately they're not able to support all of our residents with 103% capacity. So that means for every program that has 100 people who may be able to be in that program, they have 103, and that's on average. And again, sports at 82%. So my first thought and first concern when I saw this was, well, there's probably classes that are skewing this information, whether that be large programs that are significantly over capacity. So what we did is looked at the distribution of capacity. So what this shows is how each program capacity is distributed across each area of programming. So you can see aquatic has a really nice distribution in the optimal capacity range. Community classes has some potential opportunity in that I would say about 30% of them are at optimal capacity. And then our senior programming, this really stood out to me, is that over 50% of all of our senior specific programming is significantly over capacity. And again, sports programming is doing a very nice job right in that optimal range with a few outliers that are under capacity as well as over capacity. But overall, this chart really stood out to me, and I'm sure it would to you in regards to how critical our senior programming is. So some program statistics. So adult programs that were requested in 2016 and denied due to lack of facility space. As you just saw, our senior specific programming is significantly over capacity, so we were forced to turn down these specific programs, unfortunately, in 2016, including bridge tournaments, lunch groups, TV rooms, and a variety of other ones. As I stated earlier, aquatics, classes, and sports are comfortably meeting community demand with some opportunity for expansion and subtraction of lower capacity programming. Senior adult programming is losing participants due to overcrowding. 14 programming needs are currently being denied. And that was the list that I mentioned a little bit earlier. This is a quick summary of that. Sorry. 3 times. And 2016 facility statistics. So obviously programming, you want your programming to drive facilities. And in our specific instance, our facilities is the obvious constraint in our programming. This year, in 2016, we had 158 reservable facilities and parks. So that could include a pavilion, that can include an auditorium, that can include a picnic table. We had over 18,000 reservations that were made. So our customer service staff did a great job of driving reservations this last year. With our sports and facilities courts reserved 34.91% of the time. I did not back out any times that they're closed due to, let's say, weather, inclement weather, or planned closing due to field maintenance. Pavilions and picnics areas reserved 11% of the time. Obviously, we have a high distribution on the weekends. People don't typically rent picnic areas during the week, so that's where we saw that a little bit lower. Class and meeting rooms were reserved about 67% of the time. This is where we're really struggling, is our auditorium gym space is currently reserved 94% of the time. So that means throughout the year, if you want to reserve a specific day, there's a 6% chance that you're able to reserve that specific day, which is clearly unacceptable to the community at this point. And just a distribution of our larger, facility statistics for our larger rooms. Our auditoriums reserved at 94% of the time. Meeting rooms reserved 73% of the time. Freedom Center reserved 61% of the time. And then Freedom Gym 94% of the time. And you can see that the auditorium and Freedom clearly drove the high reservation capacity or reservation percentage. 2016 facility statistics, just a quick summary. Due to high class meeting room reservation rates at Freedom Center and the Community Center, it is impractical to expand programming within current facilities to meet the needs of our senior community. Due to 94% reservation rates at the auditorium and gym, expanding programming to meet the needs of active adults is not feasible with current facility constraints. Some current issues that we're facing. The use of Freedom Gym is a short-term solution. Not only can the school district limit access at any time due to their ownership of that facility. The Department of Airports recently acquired the parking lot directly in front of the gym out there, so they could technically limit access at any time, which would make it difficult to access the gym itself. The existing senior community center is maxed out. It is no longer capable of meeting the community need. At this time, no facility gap analysis has been done. Our first proposed step to a joint solution is both the City of Camarillo and PVRPD agree to a cooperative agreement that is before you today and perform a senior and community recreation facility needs study. And again, it is my recommendation to the board that we review and approve the cooperative agreement between the Pleasant Valley Recreation Park District and the City of Camarillo regarding the senior and community recreation facility needs study. Questions, concerns?
Yeah. Thank you, Mitchell. Elaine?
I'll let everybody else go first, and
Okay,
then Mike
I'll
and
let
I
Mike.
can maybe finish it up.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Mark, how about you?
Well, you know, the huge thing here is that the city is jointly working with us to solve our most pressing problem, our most underserved constituency, and our seniors. And the solution to this is really expensive, and it's not really just a recreation need. There's other needs that go along with it. And I'd like to thank Dave Norman and Mary for working so well on this and understanding that it's a community-wide need. It's not just our need, and to get the city, you know, interested and willing to partner with us to solve this problem together. And this is a really big deal, and I'm really proud of it. That's all I got.
Bob?
I'm confused on the numbers. Okay, we've got this 68.8 number that was put in the budget. Now, is that 68.8 number going to be split in half because the city's going to pay for half, or is that our share?
So we rolled that over from prior year's budget. What the agreement requires is that we split the cost of the needs study, and we allocate 120% of that potential cost to allow for any overages. We anticipate that the study itself will cost about $95,000 completely based off the prior RFP we did, which would come to an estimated cost to us, assuming we went 20% over budget, at $57,000. But we did carry over the prior year's budget allotment.
I understand, but that isn't really the numbers that we got before, is it?
Let me try. Because what's happening is, let's say we move forward with this. If we approve this and the city approves it on their next meeting, and let's say the whole thing goes out and it comes back from this goes out to bid, and let's say the price comes in at $100,000. The city is going to spend $50,000. We'll pay half that cost. So whatever the final bill, they'll pay 50%, and we'll pay 50. So $50,000 each. Our $50,000 will come out of that amount of $68,000 that we're setting aside for this. So we're setting aside $68,000 potentially in our budget to cover this cost. We don't think the cost will be up that high, and we'll have some of that money left over. But we have up to $68,000 to put toward this in our budget. But does that make any sense?
That does. What I want to know is, when that happens, are we going to get another opportunity to vote on whether or not we spend that money?
Yes, the board will have final approval on the RFP and selecting the candidates. This would obligate us to continue with the study, but on the selection of candidates and moving forward with the study, you would have
because that's way more money than I expected to spend. We're talking $70K now, or it could even be more.
So
is that what you're telling me?
No. So
That's incorrect.
let me see if I can give this a try. So last year, this past year, as part of the budget, the board approved a little over $68,000 for capital to go for this project, just like we did with Bob Kildee parking lot. Being that we weren't able to get that project done this year, we're removing that, rolling that money over to next year. So when this cooperative agreement is the first step, And so the first step is agreeing to this where whatever that price tag comes back. And believe me, both the liaisons committee for both the board as well as the city were both concerned of what we don't want to see is all of a sudden we go out to an RFP. And last year we came back to the board with a full RFP that said about 95,000. What we don't want to see is you come back this year and say it's going to be 200,000. So we've had that conversation in the committee meeting. And so looking at it and looking at the RFP last year, it was about, like I said, between about 90 and 95,000, which is where we're projecting this RFP would be again this year. And so when you split that, it's roughly a little over 45,000, which we have allocated in this budget for it. So what will happen is if we agree to this, the next steps then would be, as you'll have before you tonight, would be to go through an RFP. This will continue to go back to the liaison committee as we continue to make sure that both parties, as we're moving, are in agreement with this. But as of tonight, the budget, which you approved this year, was a little over 68,000, if that makes sense.
Okay, all I want to say is that I expected that we were going to pay about $35,000 to $40,000 for this, and I was against this initially because I thought it was too much money to be spending on a study. However, since that time, the city has agreed to pay for half, and it's come to my attention, and I've been convinced that without this study, we're not really going anywhere, and so I'm kind of torn, but if this comes back where we're paying $70,000 as our share, I'm going to have a problem with it.
It's my understanding is that in order to get the city's buy-in to this, they were not really willing to proceed without some type of a study, correct? So I think this, in part, we don't have too much choice. It's either abandon the project, pay for it all ourselves, or move forward with with cooperation of the city and then paying half. Is that correct?
It is, and I think one of the things the liaison, and I'm sure Director Mishler and Director Magner can kind of chime in, is I think what they wanted to do, and I think what we've kind of talked about, is looking at the scope of indoor facility and what that looks like. And so in order to do this study, and as you'll see, it'll come up next, is kind of what that scope looks like. But both agencies have agreed that there needs to be a study to figure out what that final, whatever that looks like, whether it's a 5,000 square foot facility or a 30,000 square. We need to do some type of assessment to figure out what that needs, and this is where both agencies said we need to do a study to look at it. I think we'll try, just like with everything, is to be as efficient as possible. But I think what we tried to do with this agreement is to make sure that a couple things is, one, that there's a joint partnership and that both agencies have agreed to pay for half of whatever that study is, to make sure that both agencies are moving forward on the same page.
This is the first step that in the city, after this presentation that you just saw, went through and was presented to the city and their council members on the liaison committee. We had to bring them up to speed because they didn't understand all that stuff that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. But once they saw that stuff, they realized we have a serious problem in the community, and they were willing to step up and work with us on it. Now, we're going to be the lead agency on this, so they're going to be working with us on this, but we are essentially going to be running this project and moving forward with it. So we'll pay all the bills and all that type of stuff, and then they'll pay us back, and they'll pay 50%. But the end goal of this first step that we're talking about tonight is to move forward to where we can have enough information come back to us so that both agencies will understand what it will cost, different options in different scenarios, or what it will cost to move forward with the next step. This will now provide the information to come up with those costs, to estimate the different scenarios that we can go forward with and how much money each one of those scenarios will cost to actually implement for the community. Does that help at all?
I think, too, and I want to compliment Mitchell and staff for the presentation, because I think a lot of this was education for the city. And we spent hours talking with this, and 3 or 4 meetings that were extremely productive. I've seen, the first meeting, it was cold. Second meeting, it was a little bit warmer, and third meeting was really, really good. The fourth meeting, we walked out of there, I think, with everybody on the same page, with the same timeline, with everything. And I think that's the important thing to understand, is that the committee has, the 2 liaison committees with staff, Mary and Mitchell and Dave and Joe have just done a fantastic job in sculpturing this agreement and everything, and to get everybody to buy off on it. So,
and the city understands that this is the first step. This is not the end. This is not the end of the process. This is just the first step we need to take to move forward to the second step. So this is step number 1, and then hopefully by early next year we'll be ready to go into step number 2. And the city government officials and stuff have learned a lot more about what else is going on across the county and other communities and stuff. So they're kind of up to speed on some of that stuff.
The elephant in the room is, no matter how much we spend for this study, let's assume we spent $100,000 for this study. Is it clear to the city that if they can't foot the bill for most of the facility, that it's not going to happen? Do they know that?
It's important. We haven't had that discussion yet, because we don't know what the second, at the end of this study, we will then be able to have a number on the table. We can start talking about the different funds and the different options we have, different agreements that we can go forward with. We can't talk about those items until we've done step number 1. That you're talking about step number 2. The city understands, and they understand that they're going to have to be part of this as we move forward. This is going to be a joint agreement moving forward. Now, we don't know.
They may say their part may be 50%, and if it's 50%, it's a pipe dream.
But they understand that they're going to be moving forward with this on this for step number 2. We haven't determined what step number 2 is yet, but they understand that they're going to have to be a partner with us on step number 2. But we can't, it's a waste of time and energy to start to talk about that until we have done step number 1, and then we can sit down and talk numbers and facts and stuff. But they understand that the city isn't just going to drop out. They're not going to do step number 1, then walk away and leave this. To move forward on step number 2, which is what we're going to do next after this first phase is over, we're going to meet back and discuss and work out those details. And they understand that. But we don't have any details to discuss yet.
It looks to me like we're going to have we need to go through this process, because if we don't, what option do we have? We can, getting back to what I said earlier, we can abandon the project now because we can't afford it. If we are, so I think we need to go through this process, do the needs assessment. As part of the needs assessment, do they include things like studies of what funding options there would be for the building? In addition to the cost and funding options, or is it just the?
So if I could jump in real quick, there's 2 things. So if once we get through this one, we'll be working on the RFP, which is the next one, which will come back with some specific things. I think one of the key points in this, as we're looking at it, if on one of the action items on page 3 of the agreement, were the action by the board. So one of the key things that we both agencies agreed to is the committee will review the final draft of the study, so once the study's done, and recommend to the district board receive and file it. But the city liaison committee will then present the study's recommendation to city council, And the ad hoc committee will then discuss the potential implementation strategies for the district and the city. So what I think everybody acknowledged in the room is that this is, you're right, Chairman Dixon, this is the first step, and it doesn't go away after the study's done. So then the question is, as we come back to the table, as Director Mishler was talking about, and what are step two? In the next presentation, there will be, and part of this was, and that was very important to the liaison committee, is looking at funding strategies and looking at what we would call a level 1, 2, and 3, because I think that addresses some of your concerns, Director Kelly, because this study could come back and say, hey, we want a $20 million facility, and everybody look like, where are we going to get that? So one of the things that the RFP will do is once we get there is actually address some of those things in what we would call a tier 1, 2, or 3 to see what is actually feasible.
So if we were to get responses and they were way too much money, we could just reject them and
correct,
and then have to go to Plan B or Plan C or whatever it was.
Correct.
Okay. I can go for that, but I'll tell you, I taught my kids, don't go to the bank and talk to them until you know how much the car cost. And I'm just a little bit afraid that in the future we're going to do all this, spend all this money, and they're going to say, okay, we'll chip in half. And if that happens, game's over. So that's my concern.
Okay. If anything, if there's no other comments, can we, is there?
Let me make a motion to approve the cooperative agreement between the Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District and the City of Camarillo regarding the senior and community recreation facility needs study.
Second.
Director Malloy.
Aye.
Director Mishler.
Aye.
Director Magner. Aye. Director Kelly.
Aye.
Chairman Dixon.
Aye. Okay. Consideration and approval of senior and community relations facility needs studies request for proposal, RFP.
Thank you, Chairman Dixon, members of the board. So now that the board has moved forward with the cooperative agreement, what I have before you today is the RFP that coincides with the cooperative agreement with what the study would actually look like. We'll discuss some specifics regarding the RFP and then recommend that the board authorize staff to move forward with the RFP contingent on the city approving the cooperative agreement at their meeting on the 14th. Just 1 second while we pull up the presentation. Thank you. All right, a little bit of background. 2013, we developed a strategic plan which identified the following needs, including collaboration with strategic partners, balancing of programs and facilities, identifications of changing demographics, as well as organizational health to meet the district service goals. In 2013, we also developed a 5-year capital improvement plan which identified parks that would require modification. 2017, district seeks to accomplish the vision set forth in the strategic plan and capital improvement plan and budgeted for a needs assessment. A little bit of analysis. We've identified 6 different tasks that will achieve the goal identified in the RFP. We'll talk about each one specifically here in a second. The first task was to evaluate current indoor programming and facilities. The second task would be to determine current and future indoor recreation and facility needs. The third step would be to identify the gap between those two. The fourth would be to identify solutions to meet the recreation needs of the community. Fifth, identify specific funding strategies to implement and maintain proposed solutions. And then sixth, we ask that a final report preparation and presentation be provided to the board. In our first task, to evaluate current indoor programming facilities, our deliverable is a complete inventory and level of service analysis of current indoor programming and facility use. So you'd see similar numbers to what we presented in the last presentation regarding how our facilities are being used and at what level they're at capacity. It would be a lot more in depth, and this would facilitate the gap analysis in task 3. Our task 2 is to determine current and future indoor recreation facility needs. of the community with the deliverable of a summary of reports and supporting data for all activities. The summary report should include photographs, electronically searchable inventory, and outreach materials and input provided at all meetings. And then again, step 3, this is the arguably the most important part of the study, is to perform a gap analysis and identify specifically what we're not doing to meet the needs of the community. Our task 4 is to identify solutions to meet the recreation needs of the community. We asked that consultants provide 3 separate solutions, including a deluxe, a standard, and an economy solution, to allow the board as well as potentially the city to identify a solution that meets budget constraints. So in the final proposal, you'll have 3 potential solutions to the current problem. And then step 4 is to identify specific funding strategies to implement and maintain the proposed solution. The way that we ask that the consultant do this is to look at potential case studies for Southern California cities that also maintain special districts. And then we also look to identify other funding mechanisms that may facilitate the potential solutions identified in the RFP. Our step 6 is a final report preparation and presentation, a comprehensive final report, and a PowerPoint presentation with any other visual aids to the district board. Our timeline for this, assuming the board decides to move forward with it tonight, is to open our request for proposal on June 15th. So that's the day after the city would potentially approve the cooperative agreement, and we anticipate that the project will be completed in April of 2018 with some specific milestones before then. Any questions about the timeline?
Let me just mention about this timeline. The city, this is very interesting, the city is very interested in moving this project forward as fast as possible. For example, originally we were going to approve this and then wait for their August meeting to get approval, or and delay it several weeks and stuff. The city came back and said, no, we need to move faster. Why don't you guys pre-approve this now? We can approve on the 14th, and that way we don't have to wait for your August or September meeting to kick this thing off. The city wants this information back as soon as possible. They're ready to move forward at max speed as quick as possible. And they were even hoping, I think, to get it back even before these dates. I'm just telling you, the city wants to move forward as fast as possible on this. And this would be probably a drop-dead date. I mean, if we can get it back sooner than this, they would be happy. Just want to mention that to you.
I would piggyback off that. City staff has been extremely helpful throughout the entire process and has been really quick to get back to us regarding any feedback. So they, again, have facilitated a really smooth process to this point. Fiscal impact. So approval of this request proposal will have no fiscal impact. After reviewing and evaluating the bids, staff will return to the board and request that we approve the bids and move forward with the study. At that point, there will be a fiscal impact.
Mitchell, can you go back to the timeline quickly, please? Okay. Could we, in thinking about the conversation at the committee, and I didn't see this, this is a great slide because I hand wrote this down and I missed something, I think. From the time we do the interviews, is it any chance that we could hold a special meeting in between there? Between 4 and 5?
You mean after the date of August 11th and before September 7th?
Yeah.
There is the possibility. I think what we were trying to do with this is just, it gives us a little bit of cushion if it takes us a little bit longer.
Okay.
So if we can, we will. Okay. But it gives us a little bit of cushion depending on when we can get those lined up. Also to do the interviews, that's the projected. But depending on how many we get in, it may take us a little bit longer. So that's the reason we left a little bit of gap in play in there.
Okay. It was just a question. Because I hadn't seen it look like that, and that's a very good slide. So, thank you. That's really puts it out there. So,
thank you. And then again, we request that the board consider approving request for proposal for the Senior Community Recreation Facility Needs Study. If you have any questions or comments.
Anyone else? Bob?
I have a question. Now, I get why we have a comprehensive study on the table. I get why the city would want to look at that to see not only what we happen to need and everybody knows we need it, but to see how we're spending our money and so forth on other stuff. I get that. But isn't this need study going to just somewhat prove what we already know? For instance, in regard to gym space, which we're at a 94% usage rate, it's just going to tell us we need more gym space, which we, of course, aren't going to be able to obtain. Is that true?
So I think potentially it could. I hope it does identify and confirm the data that was presented to you earlier. But I think we'll get more specific feedback and potentially solutions to rearranging programming to make it more efficient and provide insight into that. And I think that is what we'd be looking to gain in that specific thing.
Let me just add, Mitchell, that they're going to come back, and they're just not going to say, "Oh, you need more gyms." They're going to say, "This is optimal what you need for gym space and stuff." They're going to have specifications that can go to an architect. You know what I'm saying? So it's not going to be like arm waving and say, "Oh, you need more gym space." We know we need more gym space. Everybody knows that. The senior center's impacted. Yeah, we know that. But what types of rooms, what type of capacities, what types of stuff, what types of rooms do you need to design? Is it going to be a dance room? It's going to need different types of stuff versus some other types of rooms, cooking class rooms or computer rooms or something. So all those specifics have to be worked out to come up with the cost estimates. So when you go to the architect. So we need all those specific things to be met together, to be brought together and presented, if that makes any sense.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments?
I would add that an important part of the process is community input too. This is not just us thinking all this stuff. We need to hear from our senior community about what they want. I mean, a couple of years ago, I'd never heard the word pickleball, but now it's a fast-growing and important part of the senior recreation picture. The situation with our public golf course in town. I mean, there's a lot of different factors that all work into this, things that the city thinks about and that we're thinking about. And, having some expert guidance and getting the public's input is really important. So that gap, when you said that gap analysis is perhaps the most important, I absolutely agree. Because, we don't know. We don't know what we don't know because we haven't been doing it.
Yeah, and Laura, I think you have a really good point, because I sit in on those interviews with the first one with Director Mishler, and we're not just talking about what our current senior needs are or our current recreational needs are. We're looking out into the future, and I think that was part of our discussion with the city. Is city staff, when we were in the meetings, were like, okay, what is your need for this down the road? And we all looked at him like, we don't know, didn't we? We were telling him the truth. We don't know. And you're right, with the pickleball, you just don't know what the need's going to be. So hopefully this will help us to see into the future and things based on other people's opinions and things. So,
Can we have a motion to approve the Senior Community Recreation Facility Needs Study RFP?
I will make a motion to approve the Senior Community Recreation Facility Needs Study RFP contingent upon the approval of the cooperative agreement by the City of Camarillo.
Second.
Director Magner?
Aye.
Director Mishler?
Aye.
Director Kelly?
Aye.
Director Malloy?
Aye.
Chairman Dixon?
Aye. Okay. And we are on to informational items. Item 10. I'll start with Monday night. I had a chance to go to the city put on a program regarding the desalination plant that they're planning over off Lewis Road in near the La Campagna High School. It was a really very, very interesting study and a lot of important information there. Their information is going to be posted on the city website, so if anybody has any interest in looking at that, I think it's worth spending some time. But just kind of in a nutshell, the importance of this whole thing, the takeaway message I took is that there is a saltwater plume that is contaminating the aquifer under the city of Camarillo, which is a major source for well water to the city. And this desalination plant is designed to intercept that plume and prevent further contamination and potential destruction of the entire aquifer under the city. So it's a really important project. There is opposition from community members surrounding it, but I think this program they put on dispelled a lot of the concerns, and I'm very hopeful that this is going to go forward. I think it's a really important project. Water is obviously going to be, despite all the rain we had, water is going to continue to be a super important project for the state of California and for us locally here. And this project is certainly not going to solve it, but it's one more step in helping us manage the problem. The land that they're going to use is land that currently belongs to the Oxnard Union High School District. They're going to purchase some land from them, and it looks like they're down to 3 separate sites, and various groups have their input as to why they want one site versus another. But I think it's a really important project that needs to move forward, and I'd encourage anybody again to go on the city website and take a look at that presentation. Ventura County Special Districts.
Yeah. I'm going to start out with California Special Districts Association, and I'll end up with Ventura County and let Mike speak a little bit about that too. Mary and Mike and I went to Sacramento, one of my excursions to Sacramento. They joined me for legislative days, May 15th through 17th. We had a very successful trip up there, heard some interesting speakers. The chair of the Little Hoover Commission, Pete Nava, spoke to us and really brought some interesting things to the table. And I think one of the interesting things he said, and we talked about it last night, is if you don't tell your special district story, somebody else is going to tell it. And I think that's probably one of the most powerful things that came out of that we have to beat the table and say, this is what we do, and sell ourselves, and that gets back to Mike's branding and things, and we've just got to tell them what our mission is and things. And I think what comes back around is what happened very recently is in the commission. One of the commissioners stood up and said, oh, I think we should have a sunset plan for special districts, that they need to go back out to their communities every 10 years to get re-upped. And, really? What's that going to do to our staff? What's that going to do to our future projects and our capital projects? And we would never be able to build those beautiful baseball fields and soccer fields. It just would never happen because we couldn't get the loans. That has now died because the commissioner who brought that up resigned as of yesterday. So I don't think we're probably going to hear about that for a while again. So thought that was kind of interesting. Another thing, we went up there and met with staff from Jackie Irwin's office, and I'm drawing a blank on the other representative that we met with, his staff, from the San Gabriel Valley. Some of the people in our group was very familiar with him, and I think Mike is familiar with him from the Santa Monica Conservancy. The 2 staff members we met with were unbelievably well-informed, everything. And I think to show you how well-informed is, CSDA sponsored one piece of legislation this year. It flew through the committee unopposed. It was unanimous out of the Assembly and has now moved to the Senate. And what it was it streamlines the process for the, was it 37 or 27 districts, are counties that do not have special district representations on LAFCO. And I guess the process used to take 18 to 24 months. This will expedite the process so that these other counties can have representation by their special districts. We're very lucky in Ventura County. We have a seat at the table, and I think it's very important for us to have that. So all said and done, I don't see, last night talking with Chris, the public affairs guy for our area for CSDA, I don't think there's going to be any opposition to the bill. And I think they've already talked to the governor about getting it passed. Mary and I got an email today that kind of shook both of us up, I think. There's a trailer on the budget that could impact us as far as time-wise and things regarding union employees coming on board. So I'll get to find out a little bit more about that and let everybody know about that. Just kind of popped up. We got an email from Dylan Gibbons at CSDA wanting our feedback by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. So that tells me the urgency of it. So we will do that. Mary was grateful. I'm very grateful that Mary was able to provide some input the last time that Dylan come out and ask. But anyhow, I think there was a lot of networking. Mike was lucky that he got to meet the rest of the chapter presidents for their special districts chapters. We met with 77 members of the California State Legislative, and that's a lot of people.
Record attendance is
record attendance of 250 some people at legislative days, and it just, I mean, they do a networking thing in the evening, and there was 24 or 25 legislative people there, not just their staff. They themselves actually came to that networking. So it was, those people know that special districts exist, and I think we're making more of an impact up there. And it's CSDA, membership with CSDA is well worth it. I see it every day happening, and as I get more stuff on my desk, so where I spend more time in Sacramento. So last night, Mark and Mike and I and Mary, Mike held a Ventura County Special Districts Association meeting, the bi-monthly meeting, and extremely great presentation, Mike. So I'm going to let you talk about a little bit about the presentation. Other than that guy driving up in that beautiful blue Corvette, I have a little problem with, but that's okay. That's okay. Nice car.
So last night we had our special district, Ventura County Special Districts meeting. We held it at the Freedom Center over here at Freedom Park. I gave them a quick 5-minute rundown kind of overview of Freedom Park and stuff, which I think a lot of the individuals didn't know anything about. I think it went well, whatever, but I guess it did. And then we had 2 representatives from the Las Virgenes and the Triumphal Joint Powers Authority, special districts over there in eastern Ventura County, talking about their pure water project. This is their proposal is what they're looking at. They have some issues putting water into Malibu Creek and stuff, and they got to purify it. So they said, well, instead of spending, instead of costing maybe $80 million to dump this water, treat the wastewater sewage and dump it into the creek, they can spend $100 million or something and actually get the water up to standards to where it can be put back into the drinking system. So that's what they're actually working on. They're going through all that type of stuff. They got some tentative approval funding to do some pilot studies and projects on that and stuff. So that's what they're working toward. this is going to be a long-term project. They're just taking the first steps now. This will be going out for hopefully, probably 6 to 10 years or something before we actually see something maybe happen out there. But that's what they're working on because they don't have any groundwater out there to help them. And then, so the other advantage of doing this is that will give them a bigger reservoir in case they lose water from the state water system. They can have a certain capacity of their sewage that they can always treat and put back into the system as a backup supply also, instead of having more reservoirs and stuff. So anyway, that was kind of a very interesting project. And we had like maybe 40 people there or something, I think, at the meeting, as it turned out. I think that was good for that. Okay. Okay.
So that's it.
Okay. Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, Mike?
Oh, we had I attended the meeting on May 22nd. Nothing special. We talked about various little projects they're doing and allocated some funds to look at some trails and some purchases and stuff like that. Typical stuff.
Anything more comments on finance?
No, I think we've talked a lot about finance tonight. So, but our monthly numbers are tracking right on. We're through 10 months. Is it? Yeah, we're through 10 months of the 12-month cycle, and we're significantly under on expenses and right on track on revenue.
Okay. And liaison, we've also talked about quite a bit. Anything further on that?
I think we've thoroughly discussed the outcome of the liaison committee.
Okay. And policy committee met, and we pretty well got through the review of Ordinance 8. I guess we'll be bringing that forward our next meeting. We need September. Okay.
I think we have one more review of that before it goes from the subcommittee before it comes back to the board.
Correct. And records retention, we also discussed that. That's still in the works. A lot of work to be done on that. And we're also discussing our community service organizations and review of those contract agreements. So everything's still in the works. A lot of work on that committee, though. Foundation.
Well, we had a very successful meeting out at the Cam Grove in looking at logistics and things for the upcoming third annual fundraiser, which will be August 26th. And we have the invitations in hand now. Do we?
Working on those.
Oh, working on those. I was going to say, I thought we just approved them. So, but everything is, donations are looking good, and we just need everybody's help and support to get the word out. And would like to, I think one of the nicest things that we put into it this year, and I think it was probably Megan who came up with it, was buying a table. So that will be the challenge for everybody, is to purchase a table and bring 6 or 7 brand new people to our fundraisers. So looking forward to seeing everybody. So put that on your calendar, August 26th, and watch your mail for the invitations to be coming.
All right. Thank you. And General Manager's report.
Just a couple quick things. As staff has shown with the highlights, is that we are getting ready for summer, which means that camp starts in about a week and a half on June 19th, and you've got Pirates and Mermaid Camp, Go Skate, so it's going to be a packed summer. So if you have not registered for aquatics or any of those programs, I would suggest you do so. Equestrian Park, just to give everybody an update on that, the Parks Department over the last 3 months have been addressing the issues that have been out of the equestrian park, and trail, which means trail clearance, just repair, all of that stuff due to the winter. So they have been putting in a lot of time out there. So we'll continue to work on that. That trail is now open. And so we'll continue to monitor out there. Update on the park signs. Those have been ordered. Hopefully those should be in within the next 2 or 3 weeks. So then what we should see by the end of June, 1st of July, is some of those park signs going up. So we ordered, I think there were 11 or 12 at different parks. So some of the, as we had talked about before, some of the bigger parks and the ones that don't currently have names on the park, so we'll start to see those in 1st of July, somewhere in July, starting to go up. Poll positions, just a quick update, is Mark Lewis has already started. There are at least 3 that have been rented out at PV Fields. He's starting to put those up other places, and it does make a big difference. If you haven't seen those and the new format as well as the new pads, they look really good and they look really sharp. So those are some current things going on. Just a reminder, we have Personnel Committee meeting next week on June 14th at 5. We have Finance on June 21st at 3 p.m. So those committees will be meeting this month, and then Policy will be again in July.
Thank you. Oral communications. Does anyone have any additional comments? Mike?
No, thank you to staff. There's a lot of different things going on. We have all our different facilities and recreation programs happening. It's always amazing when I see all this stuff and community feedback and all this stuff, and many different projects and activities going on across parks and recs and everything else. Thank you.
Elaine?
No, I think I've talked enough. Thank you.
Bob?
Just briefly, this last weekend I got a chance to do my yearly trip where I fly into Columbus, and then my buddy and I drive out to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, to go to the biggest Ford swap meet in the world. And when he lives in a little town called Granville, which is about 30 miles outside of Columbus. And this time I noticed something that I hadn't really paid attention to before, and it makes me a little bit scared that maybe we're kind of going down the track of, although we'll never let it be that bad, but we're going down that track where the city is filling in with more and more and more building, and they're not leaving enough room for recreation. When I was in Granville, what I noticed, you couldn't walk a half a mile without having a major sports facility of one kind or another. On one afternoon, I got to stay one day there, and one afternoon I saw literally every single sport being practiced, all with their own facility. And the city, of course, is building, but they did one thing that's really smart. They designated certain areas for those purposes, and they're not building on them. They even have polo. Polo? But here in this city, I think eventually we're going to get to the point where we're going to grow. It's all going to be brick and mortar stuff, and we will eclipse our ability to provide the kind of recreation that we need to supply. We will still have the agricultural preservation statutes out there, and I don't know where that's going to go. Obviously, the state's going to get involved in that somehow, it looks to me. And I just hope that the average Joe out there, I consider myself an average Joe, is looking around and not just being anti-building. That's not really good enough. But to make sure their city is planned to take this type of thing into consideration. You know, a lot of people think just because we built the baseball fields at Freedom Park and the soccer and softball fields at PV Field, known as PV Fields, that somehow we're okay for the next 100 years. Nothing could be further from the truth. And I'm just kind of ranting here and hoping that somebody's listening, and look around at your city and make sure that that's the kind of city you want to have. And when you sit back and let somebody make decisions, and you don't stick your nose into it to make sure they're the right decisions, you end up with a San Fernando Valley where people are fist fighting over some dirt to play a softball game on. And that's basically all I have. thank staff for all the great work you've done. It's obvious to me that you are probably doing the best work that you've ever done.
I'll just follow up on one of the things that we didn't mention from our policy committee meeting is that's one of the items that's coming up on our agenda. That's one of the things we're looking into, just to let you know. That's on our agenda. That we're looking at that.
Mark?
Along that line, the city is actually a little behind for the size population we have, the amount of recreation space. So I'm happy to hear that that's coming up. I wanted to mention the two recent events, the Senior Expo and the Trails Day. I mean, what a knockout! I mean, we lost our great volunteer doing the Senior Expo, and Denise and Jane just stepped it up again. I mean, it was like shopping at Costco. I mean, it was just people everywhere, and so much stuff to do and so much stuff to see. It was tremendous. And the Trails Day event, I've never seen an event with so much stuff going on. I mean, there were so many hikes and make stuff and lectures and the raptors and all those animals that you could pet. I mean, it was just amazing, the depth of that event and the things that you made happen. It's like so cool. So thank you. But my sort of outside experience for the month was I attended the City of Ventura's City Council meeting this on Monday night. And the City of Ventura is actually considering closing down one or two really large recreational facilities that annually generate $4.6 million of revenue to the city. And they're considering closing them because they think they're losing money. And the reason they're losing money is that they lay off $800,000 worth of city expenses onto these two facilities and ask them to shoulder that, including $600,000 in salaries and from city, including the city manager and the finance director. And the other most amazing thing is they actually charge a lease payment on the property to the program that the city owns for the city program. They're like leasing it to themselves and asking the program to pay that. And when I read all this in an amazing 85-page report that they'd paid a consultant to do, I was just blown away by how can anyone not value something that amazing and it's that valuable. That 4.6 million represents about 500,000 man-hours of recreational use. It's a really, really successful program. But because they're burdening it with so many of their own expenses, on paper it looks like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. We need to put buildings on these parks. And the fact that they were actually considering it, just like, I couldn't believe it, and made me so thankful that we're a special district and we would never consider doing stuff like that, because that's not what we're here for. We're here for Parks and Recreation. So be thankful that the city of Camarillo has the system that we have, and that we have responsibility for development and all those things with the city and responsibility with us. And now we have the added benefit of working better, much better together and doing more things. But anyway, it was an aha moment, because I spent many years sitting out in this audience before I took one of these chairs, and I was sitting out there with that same feeling that I used to have, like, what are these people thinking? What are they doing? Are they serious? But the reality is they have a whole other set of problems that are just a priority for them. So that's what they're focused on, and they're not really all that recognizing of the value that their Park and Rec department has. And it was sad. It was really sad. So it was a great lesson, and I'm so glad that you guys could get it here in 3 minutes instead of having to spend a whole evening hearing it like I did. So, but that was my month, and I wanted to share it. That's all I have.
Okay, my last comments are just to first of all, I went to the Trails Day opening also, and that was a phenomenal event. And I got to admit, it's the first time that I had actually hiked that entire trail, and it's unbelievable for anybody who has not gone to see that. Within our district is this really amazing hiking trail, and I'd encourage the public to really go out there and check out the hiking at Oak Grove Park, and that kind of just kind of wanted to add that on to what Director Kelly had said about setting aside space, but we need to include it in with what he said. I'd like to emphasize that I think we need to have a lot of space for disorganized sports too. We have lots of, we want to have fields for baseball and soccer and things like that, but we also want to have fields where people can just go out there and just hike and have a day with just their family and without any specific organization, just to have a good, enjoyable time in the outdoors. So with that, we will be adjourning to a closed session temporarily, and we'll be back to report following that. So I guess we'll call this section of the meeting and adjourn to closed session.
You do your gavel thing, don't you?
I don't know, do I?
Yes, you have to.